blessing to be here. Just thanking the Lord for his goodness and mercy. So glad that I'm saved. I'm just glad that the Lord thought enough of me. When I couldn't get to him, he came to me. And I know what it's like to be lost. But I can tell you, I know what it's like to be found. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm in the book of Psalms tonight, Psalm 12, please. Book of Psalms. I've enjoyed the meeting. I thank the Lord for the good singing and the mercy of God that he's bestowed upon us to allow us to be here. I want to ask you to stand to your feet for a moment. I'll read these 8 verses out of this Psalms. And I hope the Lord lets me convey to you what he's put in my heart. Only God can do that. And I hope it gets further than just our ears, but I hope it gets into our heart. I want to see God do something. And I am convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, the church is primed for revival. I'm convinced that if any time during the New Testament days of the church age, we're primed for revival. Convinced God can do it. I'm convinced he wants to do it. I'm convinced that he will do it. And I know that he desires to stir up his church, fire us up. And when he calls us out, that we'll be blazing hot for his honor and glory. We're not on the losing side. We're not going down. And we're not outnumbered. For if you think so, you ought to read the life of Elisha when he's down in Dothan. And he had a little servant with him that was terrified to death. And he said, alas, master, they that be with them are more than they that be with us. And so the old man of God said, I just got to talk to Jesus for him. And he said, I pray thee, Lord, you'd open a young man's eyes. And he had an eye-opening experience. And he got to see what the man of God knew. And he said, alas, master, they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And all around that mountain was horses of chariots of fire round about the man of God. And he was saying, bring it on. No need to be nervous. Everything's all right in my Father's house. And we just so thankful. I enjoyed everything. I enjoyed the meals. I've enjoyed the basket that I received, and I've been looking for watermelon. And only certain few people receive it. Like Benjamin had a mess, over there in the book of Genesis. And like Ruth had a double portion, and only singing preachers that play pianos get watermelon around here. So if I can play and sing next year, maybe I'll get some watermelon in my basket. The Lord willing. You better laugh because we're going to cry here in a minute. Psalms 12, if you'll look, please. Thank you, preacher, for letting me be here, and thank the Lord for good mercy and all the provisions and everything. And I want to thank you again for coming and working on my house. Thank you. Psalm 12. Help. There's a comma. I don't know how long that pause was there. But this Psalms, this psalmist said, help! You ever feel like that? And you ask for help, none comes. But he knew what to ask. Help, Lord. Now this was a burden he had. Maybe my battery's going, all right, so maybe, go ahead, brother. So here in the text, he said, now help, Lord, for the godly man ceaseth. For the faithful fail among the children of men. They speak vanities, every one with his neighbor, with flattering lips and with a double heart do they speak. The Lord shall cut off the flattering lips and the tongues that speak proud things, who have said, with our tongue we shall prevail. Sound like a politician. With our tongue we shall prevail. Our lips are on. Who is Lord over us? For the oppression of the poor, for the sighing of the needy. Now will I arise, saith the Lord. I will set him in safety from him that puffeth at him. The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in the furnace of the earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord. Thou shalt preserve them from this generation and forever. Look at verse number 8. The wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. You can be seated. Father, I am so thankful for your love and mercy. Thankful for the wonderful presence of God in this place. Thank you for your saving power. Thank you that you hear and you answer, you move and you work. I'm glad you care. Now, Lord, I'm the least of any that I should even stand in this place. Lord, I ask you that you would help me and you would anoint me, and God, that you would use me to be a help and a blessing unto the men of God and to the people of God. Please bind every demon, every devil, every wicked and every foul spirit. Give us liberty now. Robe us in that old-time mantle and help us to preach as a dying man unto dying people. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. In these troublesome days and hours in which we live, surely verse number 1 would declare in this moment of time that it is so blatantly true that when we look and consider around our communities, around our congregations, around our country and our counties, that it seems to me that the godly men are ceasing. We're not increasing. We seem to be ceasing. It seems as if that we have come from the days when the young preachers at camp meetings were on the front pew, egging the men of God on. There was an amen corner, and there was holy living, and there was a fire burning in their heart, because there was such an overwhelming example in the church of saints of old-time prayer warriors. They would lay their hands upon younger people, old-time grandmas that walked with God, prayed their children through war, prayed for flour, prayed for eggs and milk, and prayed about getting the bills paid, prayed for a job, for a husband, and that the fields would yield the increase, that they would have rain when they needed, and God would bless the work and labor of their hands. Old-time grandmas seem to be thing of the past. Now grandmas want to be sexy at 60. They want to look like they're 15 and 16. They don't have that old time walk and holiness about them. Now don't get upset because I come through a generation where that used to be. It seems like they cease. Seem like they are decreasing among us. Now everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants to be accepted. Nobody wants to be different. That the aged women teach the younger women how to love their husbands. That ain't happening like it ought to be. You look around society, people are not getting married. They're shacking up. They don't want to do it God's way. They want to do it a convenient way. Grandmas are embarrassed about how grandkids are living. Not everybody. There's exceptions. Stay with me now. But for the most part, they don't have godly teachers. They don't have teachers that sit in an old-time Baptist church where the man of God rears back and preaches and instills holiness and true living in their heart. They are suppressed, they're depressed, and they are pushed aside. Society has these transgenders that are reading to our children. When Grandma would get up when somebody started that, she'd march down to that schoolhouse and she'd tan somebody's behind and straighten that mess out. Now she stays home. She's afraid to say anything and wants everybody to like her. Even Buns, what is it? SpongeBob? Is that what it is? Even they want Bert and Ernie to like them. I had a grandma that wouldn't even let you watch Lawrence Welk. She wouldn't even allow Sears and Roebuck catalog to be in her house. You can say that's old-fashioned and old-timey, but it was a day in which there was a fear and reference to God, and when you went to Granny's house, you didn't backtalk Grandma, you didn't run your mouth, you sat down and kept yourself quiet and listened to what they had to say. Now marching in the streets with ungodly stuff on their head, mocking and laughing and slaughtering little babies and saying it's a woman's choice and listen to me. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? And they sit in churches while the governor of Kentucky's a deacon. He even pronounced that churches are non-essential. Come on now, he sees a deacon at a church ought to be undeaconified. That's what he ought to be. But they are in control. They are seemingly elevated among the people, and that's who has the platform. Now, I'm not trying to kill this meeting. Dear God, I'm trying to get us somewhere. For the godly man ceases. That bothers me. That troubles me. We got kids on crystal meth. We got them hooked on everything in the world. And there's no praying grandma. There's no praying saints of God like they ought to be. And everybody turns to the world to try to find the answers to all the problems. Even Boy Scouts have perverts. Now they don't want to call them Girl Scouts or boy. They just want to call them Scouts. They don't know what gender is. Any farm boy that has goats or been around hogs or chickens know that you can't have little baby chickens without a rooster and a hen. We all know that. We understand that. But look how we're overrun. They have got us in such a corner that it seems like we're afraid to wiggle our hand. Was a time you had men like Lester Leo Roloff. Was a time they would stand up and declare what God said and didn't care who liked it or didn't like it. And they had an impact and an influence because they were more godly people around. Help, Lord, because the godly man ceaseth. Now watch this. Look at verse 1. The faithful man from among us, they fail. What does that mean? That means they're tired. I'm 65 years old. I've got bladder cancer. I ought to be retired. I ought to be sitting on the front pew causing the preacher trouble. Everybody seems to think that's the right thing to do. Ain't that right? But there's no place for us to retire and back up. Brethren, do you ever get tired? I found myself one day, Brother Andy, saying, I'm tired of being the bad guy. You ever get tired of being the mom and telling every kids no? Don't that wear out on you sometimes? I got a good friend of mine, a Vietnam vet. He's went through all of that and got saved by the grace of God. And he got Parkinson's disease, got all kinds of stuff going on in his body. And he said to me when I talked to him the other day, he said, it seemed like my battles are to get easier. But I'm telling you, preacher, they're worse on me now than they was when I was young. I'm tired of doing this stuff all the time. It ain't that we just feel like there's no use. We just get tired. And when we try to put out this fire and fix that fire and get that stirred up, got that fixed, another one breaks out over here, and then something breaks out over here, we're constantly in a battle, in a struggle as the saints of God. And we get distracted. We get discouraged. And we get to the place that we just feel like, what's the use? I felt that way. I've even got, as a preacher, saved, called by God, and God gloriously saved me. I got to the place I didn't want to read my Bible before. I've got to where I didn't want to pray. I got to the place, say, my God, just let somebody else do it. But you can't get like that. It ain't a shame that you get there. It's a shame that you stay there. And there's somebody bigger on the inside. If we would allow him, he can help us get past that and get somewhere and get the job done. How would you like to be a saved school teacher? How would you like to be a saved man sitting in a Baptist church drive a school bus? They would put me in jail. I remember the days they stopped the bus and wore your hind end out and make you walk home. Now you can't even tell them no. I don't live in that world. I can't be bound up in that stuff. Brethren, America needs some old-time grandmas. America needs some of that young boy shouting and having a good time. While the world watches that, they think he's gone crazy. But if he's at a football game, it'd be right. If he's somewhere in the world and something going on, it'd be the right thing. Oh, honey, my God, it thrilled me to my soul that God got on him and he couldn't sit down, and it got so big he couldn't be still. And I even saw the watermelon man take a lap. We've got to do all of that. That's where we get our strength from. That's where we get our courage from. That's where we get our battery charged up and our soul refired. Do you see verse number 8? The wicked walk on every side. Now, don't get upset. I'm just going to make a statement and you try to help me figure it out. How can you be a Christian and love Jesus and believe what they promote on their platform as a Democrat? How can you do it? How can you agree with them and you say you're right with God and they want to slaughter babies, promote homosexuality, and even want God out of the platform? I shouldn't have to say anything to you about that. It ought to be burning in your heart to say, something ain't right. Something ain't right. I don't care if it's independent, Republican, I don't care what they call themselves. How can I sit back and watch them exalt themselves and promote themselves and sit back and not want to do something about it? Now, we're talking about a national party now, and I don't think I'm getting so political. I'm just getting right where we need to be. Can you believe that they were promoting and pushing a man that was married to a man that was kissing on public arena, and everybody saying, wow, that's what we need? You check out their pedigree, honey. They're sitting somewhere in a church somewhere. Come on. And everybody's sitting back, grieved, not wanting to say nothing, not wanting to cause trouble, not wanting to stand out, and not wanting to be counted for.
Yeah, that's right.
Church, we're in the last days. Perilous times are here. We don't have to wait for them to come. They're here. And it's time that we understand this one thing. They're prevailing because we've been failing. You ever had to take a test over? I understand that there's some pretty educated people here. I've got dyslexia. And I see things backwards. And when I get nervous, it's even 10 times worse. And when I went to Bible college, I would make maybe a C. It would bother me. I'd ask my Bible teacher, can I retake this test? And I'd take it and I'd make 98 because I wasn't so nervous. I'd take English, and here's what they would say. What's a dangling participle? I ain't got a clue what that is. What's a pronoun? What's an adjective? I said, I'm an agitator. I don't know about no adjective. And then I was sitting there one day, I passed all my tests. But when it came to English, I could not get it. I mean, this thickhead from Muhlenberg County, Kentucky, I could not get that English. And I'm sitting there, and old Dr. John Waters, old white-haired man of God, come walking by after we had midterm test and said, hey, preacher, what's going on? I said, Dr. Waters, and I'm crying. I'm tore all to pieces. I said, if I've got to get this grammar and this English to be a preacher, I'll never make it. And that old saint of God with hair about your color and real smile on his face, he went, dear brother, you got this all wrong. We're saved by grace and not grammar. You know what I was doing? I was failing because of my insecurity and ability. Some people are equipped to do better things and smarter. I'm not equipped to do that. I'm not equipped to play a piano. I wish there was. I'd get water belly. I'm just kidding. I better get right or business is going to get in my heart. You see what I'm trying to tell you? But every one of us, God equipped us for something in this life. Every one of you has influence over a certain amount of people. Every one of you have ability to minister to different people I could never reach. I would turn them off. You turn them on. But I ain't supposed to turn them on. It's your job. You got a place. I got a place. And look around. Don't you see that we need godly people involved, not spectators? No. We got to be participators and get involved in these last days for the glory of God.
Yes. Amen. Yes, sir. Right. Yes, preacher.
Godly man faileth. Preacher, I can remember my little grandmother. She had a bonnet. She wore her little apron. And she's my great-grandma, and I'd walk in her house. She'd set us all down. And she'd say, now, they called me Butch. And she'd put her little old hand on my head. She said, now, Butch, I'm a-praying for you. That didn't mean too much at the moment, but when she done it in my presence, there was somebody with her testifying, she's been talking to me about you. And it still walks with me today. My wife is in the house of God because she has a grandmother that had a husband that wasn't right with God, and she had them kids. And them kids started having kids, and she'd get that old car, and the doors wouldn't shut good, and she wouldn't have a bunch of money. She'd drive by the house of her children. Said, if you ain't going to take them, I'm going to take them to church. I want to learn about Jesus. You see, people were failing, but she stepped up. And now I've got a wife. Should have been drowning in sin out in the world. But somebody said, oh, no, no, no. I'm not going to let that happen. I can't let it happen. I'm not going to give up. I'm not backing up on it. She rolled up her old sleeve and got in her heart. And she said, I ain't about to let this go by. Look at our children's children and our grandchildren and our neighbors and families. There's so much trouble on every side. We're overwhelmed by it. And here's what I want to preach about tonight. Look at all the stuff we're in. Look at Minnesota. Ain't that pitiful? Look at St. Louis, Missouri. What happened? Whatever happened to our country? We are the people of the living God. We're not powerless. We're not hopeless. We're not without help. We're not without God on our side. We're just tired. And we get wore out. And we're failing in our heart. And we're letting up and letting off. And we're letting too much stuff slip by. You know what the church is looking for and everybody's looking for? They're looking for somebody that's willing to leave it all on the field. Just put it all out there, lay it on the line, and lay it on the field. Whether we win or whether we lose, whether they get saved or get right, I don't want to leave nothing undone. If you knew where he found me at, if you knew what God had to do to rescue me out of the pits of sin, out of the pit of hell, if you knew where God found me, you'd understand something about me. I should have died. I should have been in hell. But for the grace of God, it reached further down than what I could reach up. And I'm only here because somebody invested time and love and compassion in me. They're more than a bunch of drunks. They're more than a bunch of junkies on opioids. They're more than a bunch of people that have a wrecked and ruined life. They're souls to whom Jesus Christ bled and died for. And they need God like I needed God. And they need you to get full of God. And we can do something about it. I just had a pastor friend of mine. We started at the same time. I got saved November 18th, 1984, 9:45 on a Sunday morning. Ever tell you about that? Oh, Lord. 2 weeks later, I got called to preach. 2 weeks after that, I'm preaching in churches. I don't know nothing about it. I'm 29 years old. I ain't got a clue. I give away a house, car, 2 businesses, and my wife said, fool, half of that's mine. I wound up at Camp Zion, Myrtle, Mississippi, saved and called to preach, a young preacher, 29 years old, in January. I got saved in November, got called to preach in December. Guess where I'm at in January? Power conference. Guess who's with me? My friend that I was telling you about. Guess what happened? Well, Brother Doyle, come up and sing a few songs. We're going to have some 5-minute preachers. The Holy Ghost said, you going? I said, oh, no. Before I turn around, I'm standing up there behind Percy Bray. Come on, young man, see what God's got for us. Some old saint of God sitting on the front said, look at me, son. Don't worry about that crowd. I'm going to help you. I don't know who that man was, but I get to have him. I'm going to shake his hand. That young man started the same time I done. Now he's pastoring my brother-in-law. We prayed 29 years. That man to get saved. He's saved and he's a trustee in the church. He called me 2 days ago and said, preacher, I got a mess going on. Got a 27-year-old man. Now please understand this. Revealing himself to his mama, calling his mama all kind of ungodliness, burns himself. They took him to dry clinics, everywhere they can take him. I said, y'all failed in one thing. You're taking him to society when you ought to take him to the sovereign God of heaven. You know what I think? Had it not been for the grace of God, I'd be in that 27-year-old man, and my life would be a mess. How would you like to be that mom and that dad that raised that boy, trying to get him right with God and needing help? I tell you what they need. Need somebody to lay it all on the field. And don't leave anything. Don't leave. Just play as hard as you can play. Go as hard as you can go. And when you get to heaven, you're going to be glad. Thank God. You didn't set this one out. Church, we're nearing home. And here's what we're losing in this day that we need back. We need a purpose. You know what we need today? David said to that crowd, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? You know what David done? That whole crowd was in a foxhole. They down in a mess. They scared to death and being defied by a big old giant by the name of Goliath. He said, I got some news to tell you. I might prove your armor. I might prove anything you got, but this one thing I know. I remember there came a bear out. I remember there came a lion out trying to get one of my little sheep. And the same God that delivered me and delivered them sheep, I got something. Hey, big boy, come here a minute. I got something to tell you. I'm not coming to you with sword and with spear and with staves. I got something to tell you. I'm coming in the name of the Lord God, Jehovah, and the battle's not mine, it's God's. And before this thing's over, I'm going to cut your forehead off. How would you like to be on the side of that valley when that big giant stomped his foot down and said, right, big boy? How'd you like to have been over there when David went, where's them little old stones at? He picked up smooth stones, put them in his little script, went running out there and said, this is going to be fun. When it left David's hand, got in God's hand. Yes. And God said, I got this in David. Woo! I bet that John said, what just happened to me? You know what this world's looking for? Some Davids. Can you be a David? Son, thank you for shouting and praising God. God's got a job for every one of you, Malachi. And your generation is dying and going down. You've got friends, family members, their life's a mess, and you get fainted and you get tired. Somebody needs to put it all on the field. Get your Bible back down deep in your heart. Get back a purpose in your life. I ain't about to let mine die. Did you hear what Dr. Allen said? He'd pray and walk through the field at night, call on God for his family. Did you hear him talk about his youngest sister, the last one of the family got saved? And he talked about the family circle is not going to be unbroken. My God, don't we have a cause that see our family get born again, see our children get right with God, see our grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews get right with God. There's a precious granddaughter in here come up here weeping and crying. Her grandpa sat right back yonder while we was shouting and having a big time. She got up on that altar and said, I refuse to give up. I seen her the first day I come out. She said, I sure won't see my grandpa come back to church. You know what she's got? She's got a purpose. You know what she's fighting against? All the ungodly people out there trying to take her grandpa to hell. But I got news for you. Greater is he on your side than him on their side. You stay right there. Keep your purpose. Keep your heart right. You'll watch God get a hold of him and God turn his life around. We've got to get our purpose back. Leave it all on the field. I prayed 19 years for my dad. 19 years. He got so aggravated at me. He said, boy, all you ever do is bring that Bible and you always stirring up trouble. I'm tired of you coming. You stay away from my house. My own daddy told me that. I just went and talked to God about it. I said, God, he's blind. He can't see. He's in a mess. My mama said he couldn't sleep for 3 days. I didn't go back, but God sure did. God hung out over there where he is at. And he said to my mama, you better call that boy and tell him he's welcome anytime he wants to come. 29 years. Old Teamster truck driver. I was in evangelism, had a 1960 model Greyhound bus I bought off of Harold Rochester. Demon possessed from one end to the other. Wore out 48 times before I got it. Then I got rid of that and got a 1971 model Silver Eagle. 4 inches wider and 5 foot longer. I thought I had moved into the Taj Mahal. I remember going home for Christmas. Here's my old Navy daddy, cusser, mean, rough. I remember going to meeting after meeting after meeting. I'd have people, I said, will you pray for my dad? Will you pray for my dad? I watched God stir a missionary up from Mexico that drove from down in Monterey all the way through Mexico, all the way through Texas, all the way up to Kentucky, knocked on my daddy's door and said, I got something to tell you, sir. You got a boy that loves God and he loves you and God burdened me for you. I come to tell you Jesus has saved you. I watched God start saving other people's moms and dads. And I thought, will he ever save mine? Will he ever save mine? Will he ever save mine? I was preaching live on the radio one night. God stopped me right in the middle of a message and said, I'm going to save your daddy. I forgot where I was at. I took off a run and got the shout, and they said, what is wrong with that preacher? I said, I tell you what's wrong with me. I just heard from heaven, and God going to save my daddy. Guess who was listening? Some folks in my family. Guess what they told my dad? Your boy said God's going to get you. I remember when the house burnt, I remember all that tragedy come. Daddy passed out with sugar diabetes, spiked real high, wound up in a nursing home. I remember going to the house before all that transpired. It's Christmas. And I remember holding my daddy's hand, my mom's hand. He said, pray for us, son. I didn't pray, I preached. I felt his whole hand tremble. I heard him shake and rattle. And you know what kept me going? Ungodly men were prevailing. I got weak and I got the failing in my heart. People start to fasting and they're praying for my dad and say, I'm praying for him, I'm praying for him, don't give up. I remember him in that nursing home, and I went in there to see him. And I sat beside his bed. He can't feed himself, can't dress himself. I said, Dad, you need to get saved. He said, boy, when me and the old man upstairs get it fixed, I'll let you know. I said, number one, he ain't an old man. And he ain't upstairs. He's in heaven. And if you don't repent and get right with God, you're going to die. And, Dad, you're going to wind up in hell, and it's going to break my heart. He said, I want you to preach my funeral, son. I said, I can't do it, Dad. Why you want to be so mean to me? Make me preach your funeral when you're in hell and make me stand there with a broken heart and tell everybody you died without God? I said, I don't think I could find enough strength to do it. But if you ever get saved. Old Brother Gary Hall was having a nursing home service over at that VA nursing home. My old daddy come wheeling down in the wheelchair. Gary Hall said to my daddy, Mr. Thompson, when you going to get right with God? He said, I already done it. And it's better than what y'all been telling me. Call my boy and tell him what happened to me. 19 years, you see, you better have a purpose. My dad's in heaven right now. My wife's dad's in heaven. Her aunt just got gloriously saved. Ended up with cancer. I preached her funeral. She's in heaven. You better not quit on God. You better not back up on God. You better keep pushing forward and leave it all on the field. Our kids. Our kindred, and just mankind. Somebody better have a purpose. Secondly, leave it all on the field when it comes to this matter of praying. You know, sir, where we're really failing at? We have Wednesday night prayer meeting, we never pray. Am I right? We have meetings to have prayer, and here's what we do. We talk about everything else, and we don't pray. And the hardest thing you'll ever do is to be consistent in your prayer life. Because the devil knows if you stay there, he's going to lose the battle. How many has ever been distracted from your prayer life? How many's ever been delighted in your prayer life? How many's ever had God meet with you in your prayer life and you get up and pray when he nudges you and you feel like, I'm too tired, but you get up anyhow and you're over there and you're talking to him and he gets real to you. And you keep talking to him and he says, I know all of that, but what do you want? And you keep talking to him. He said, I know all that, but when you tell me what you want, finally you get through all of that stuff and you get honest with God and just say, I tell you what I want, God. He said, I've been knowing it the whole time. And it feels like you just get up in his lap and he hugs you real good. And you feel the breath of heaven get down in you. And you feel like it's all right now. I just touched heaven and it's all right now. And you get a shouting spell on you. And you can't help yourself. Then you don't want to quit praying. And you want to stay there. And after a while you look around, it's been over an hour, been over 2 hours, and my God, you're still in the glory. And when you get out of the glory, you said, I don't want to go, I want to stay. And when you go back, it ain't a pile of mess in the way. It ain't a bunch of junk there. Just you and him got locked up together. Got to loving on each other. got the breath of God in your heart, and you come out with glory in your soul, and next time you go, the phone rings, you get a text, and something happens, and the devil said, I can't let that go on. You know the most powerful thing in the world? You want to know what that is? A church that's on praying ground. You know what the devil despises more about you and me and the church? They don't mind. He don't mind you preaching some. Well, matter of fact, he don't mind if you start praising some. He don't mind if you get happy and you just stay around in fellowship. But it sure makes him nervous. Ungodly men are prevailing because we are not leaving it all on the field when it comes to this matter of praying. I remember years ago I went to a church and we started a meeting that run 10 weeks. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Saturday, Monday, all the way through. 10 solid weeks. I remember every battle in the world that could come along. But here's what I do remember about that meeting. They'd get up early before they'd go to work, Brother Sam, and they'd come and bow and gather in that tent. And they'd pray for a couple hours before they go to work. And they'd go to work all day, fight the devil all day long. And when they get off of work, first place they go. Nobody told them to. They went right back to that tent. And they got to praying in that tent. Then they'd go home, get dressed, come back to church. Then we'd have church. Y'all can tell I'm long-winded. We'd have church. And God would show up. You know what they'd do before they'd leave? They'd get back on that altar and they'd pray for another couple hours. You know what they seen God do? The biggest drunk in that community got gloriously saved. God shut a bar down. Y'all listen to me. God shut a bar down. I mean, people getting saved left and right. And God done a great work. You want to know why? Because they made up their mind that they're tired of the humdrum and going through the motion. It wasn't what I was doing. It's what they were doing. They was connecting with somebody big enough to work in their community and work in their families. And oh, can I tell you what they done? God got to working. There's a man in that church. His daddy left when he's a young boy. Hadn't seen him. Didn't know where he's at for years. Had a vacation scheduled. And during the meeting, the vacation was canceled. He said, "Fully on my vacation, I want the brethren to pray for me, that I can see my daddy, meet my daddy. I want him to go to church with me." Guess what happened? He found out his daddy was living in Nashville, Tennessee. Hadn't seen him since he was a young boy. His daddy was a chopper pilot at Vietnam. He said, "Dad, if you'll come, I'll give you a first-class ticket. I'll buy a brand new bedroom suit. I'll take you to the finest restaurant. I just want you to come, meet your grandkids. I want to see you, and I want you to go to church." I was there when he picked his dad up at the airport and brought him to the house. I was there when his dad seen his grandkids for the first time. I was there when that boy started weeping and crying and said, "Preacher, there's my dad. There's my dad. This is my dad." I was there when he walked into the house of God, sat on the front pew with his son. You want to know how that happened? He had a purpose, and he left it on the field. He had a prayer, and he prevailed, and he prayed, and he left it all on the field.
Yes, yes.
Church, you know what we need? Every pastor, every evangelist, every church member, here's what we need. We need the power back in our life. I refuse to live this life without God's touch and power on my life. We used to long for that. You know what's going to push all this stuff back? It ain't eloquent speech. It ain't our personalities. I tell you what it is. It's the power of God that gets in you, that gives you courage when you don't have it, and gives you joy when you don't really feel like you need it and you can't make it through. I tell you what you can do. Every person in this building, grandparents, I watch my wife, and I'm going to close. I watch my wife. She's sort of introvert type lady. I watched man of God for years as people would shout and praise God and things would get on, and I'd watch her just sit back and just watch it go on. And I'd always say something like this: one of these days, it's going to get on you and you can't help it. Nah. One of these days, honey, it's going to get on you and you can't help it. I've run through churches. I've climbed on top of buildings. I've prayed on top of the house. I've run through the field. I've shouted myself till I can't even talk. But my wife sits there, and it ain't that she don't want God. She just not the outgoing personality, not the emotional kind. Well, if I gave her $500, she might get emotional. I ain't tried it because I know what you'll do. I remember pastoring in North Carolina, and when that little storefront building started that church in our living room. Brother Marvin West, y'all may know him. He used to play the fiddle for the Rochester family years ago. Him and his family was at that little storefront building, and they got to singing. People got stirred up, and I got to the altar around some folks praying with them, and I heard a woman throw down the most Comanche war whoop I ever heard in my life. Wow! Just screaming at the top of her lungs. And I'm saying, whoever that is, God help them. God bless their heart. It's real. I'm glad it's real. And so the service went on, and everything concluded, and I'm at home, and we're getting ready for bed. She said, "Did you hear that woman shout tonight?" I said, "I did." I said, "I didn't recognize who it was." I said, "Do you see who it was?" I was busy. She said, "It was me." She said, "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me." And she would sing with a little group in that church, and every once in a while, we're at a funeral home and doing it, and every once in a while, and she, wow! Scare them people to death. That old time dose of God's power get on you. You get the I can't help it, and you don't even care what they think anyhow. You just sing and worship God, have a good time, and something going on in your heart. It's something like this, and I promise you I'm closing after 4 more times of this.
Yeah, keep on.
Yeah, right. Good friend of mine by the name of Howard Calvert. He's over at Wynn, Arkansas. He's in heaven now. He's at the hospital one day, had a bunch of stuff go wrong, and he's over there at the hospital. And as he's walking down the hospital, there's a black lady getting in the elevator. And here's what she's doing. My fingers can't snap. I got arthritis. Somebody snap for me. There it is. Do it again. And she kept doing that, saying, "There's something in the drinking water. There's something in that drinking water. There's something in that." And he's dealing with heart attacks, people having stroke, bad things going on. He said, "What's wrong with that woman?" He went over there praying for everybody, trying to get them all encouraged. Went down the hallway, got back in that elevator. There's that little black lady. There it is. And she's still doing that. There's something in the drinking water. There's something in that drinking water. He said, all of a sudden, God said, "Wasn't there something in the water for you?" God, he got to say it. There sure is something in that drinking water. Amen. Him and that black lady had church in that elevator, walking down the hallway, going through that hospital singing, "There's something in that drinking water." You know what he preached on Sunday? There's sure something in that drinking water. You remember when you found out there was something in that drinking water? And you got, I can't help it, you got God on you, and it thrilled your soul. We need to get back. Godly men are ceasing. Godly men are ceasing. Ungodly folks are prevailing. We can make a difference. We can chart the course and change the course of this nation. Don't you think that God's done with the church. And don't you think that God's done with you. This is the greatest opportunity we have ever had to get something done for God. Let's stand to our feet. Could you play something there, Brother Sam, for a moment? Are you tired?